What would you do if someone you trusted more than anyone in the world betrayed you in the most unimaginable way? What if that betrayal came not from a stranger, but from someone you laughed with, confided in, and considered family? Jessica Mulroney says she kept quiet for far too long, but now, the truth is out. The story she's about to reveal is one that shakes the very foundations of friendship, trust, and public perception. And at the center of it is Meghan Markle. Before we continue, please hit the like button, subscribe to the channel, and turn on the notification bell for updates. The world knows Meghan as a princess of media attention, a figure who has been both adored and vilified in headlines that span decades. But what happens when the real drama isn't on red carpets or behind palace walls, but in the private lives of those who thought they knew her best? For Jessica Mulroney, it was a nightmare she never saw coming, a betrayal so personal and so shocking that it forced her to reconsider everything she thought she knew about loyalty, friendship, and love. Before we dive into the heart of the story, let's set the stage. Jessica Mulroney, a Canadian fashion icon, television personality, and mother, has lived much of her life in the public eye. She is celebrated for her charm, her style, and her ability to connect with people effortlessly. But even public figures, as glamorous as they seem, are not immune to heartbreak. Behind the perfectly curated social media images, behind the smiling selfies at galas, lies a story of profound personal pain that Jessica kept hidden until now. Imagine waking up one morning to discover that someone you trusted implicitly had not just crossed a line, but obliterated the boundaries of your life in ways you never thought possible. How would you react? Anger? Shock? Denial? Jessica felt all of this and more. She found herself grappling with emotions so raw, so intense, that for months she couldn't bring herself to speak, couldn't bring herself to confront the truth publicly. Silence became both her shield and her prison. And yet, silence has its limits. Because when betrayal runs this deep, when a personal wound becomes a public story, the truth refuses to stay hidden. It seeps out. It leaks into conversations, into whispers behind closed doors, into the relentless media scrutiny that no one, not even someone as careful and poised as Jessica, can escape. What did Meghan do exactly? The details are explosive, scandalous, and deeply personal. But here's the thing. Jessica's revelation isn't just about the act itself. It's about trust. It's about the subtle, insidious ways betrayal infiltrates every corner of a life you thought was secure. It's about the quiet suffering, the sleepless nights, the frantic questioning of what you could have done differently. It's about grappling with the uncomfortable, unthinkable reality that someone you loved could choose self-interest over loyalty. Before this story came to light, Jessica Mulroney lived a life many would envy. She had professional success, a loving family, and a circle of friends that seemed rock solid. Meghan was at the center of that circle, or so it appeared. Friends celebrated together, traveled together, laughed together in ways that seemed unbreakable. But appearances, as we all know, can be deceiving. Sometimes, the brightest smiles mask the darkest intentions. And Jessica's story is a testament to that truth. Now, let's pause and ask you directly. If someone you loved could betray you in ways you couldn't even imagine, how long would you stay silent? Weeks? Months? Years? Jessica stayed silent, weighed down by fear, by concern for her family, by the looming judgment of the public eye. Every day, every interaction was a delicate dance between appearing normal and managing a storm inside her own heart. And yet, for all the pain, there is also courage. Because the decision to speak, to finally confront the truth, is not easy. It requires bravery, resolve, and a willingness to face consequences that can ripple across careers, friendships, and public opinion. Jessica Mulroney made that decision. She chose to speak, not in anger, but in clarity, not for revenge, but for the truth. And what she reveals is a story that will shock you, make you question the nature of friendship, and force you to see Meghan Markle in a light few have witnessed before. But before we get to that moment, the confession, the confrontation, the emotional upheaval, we have to understand the foundation of this friendship. We have to explore how Jessica and Meghan came together, how trust was built, and how the cracks, though subtle at first, began to form. Only then can we fully appreciate the magnitude of the betrayal, the depth of the pain, and the courage required to finally tell the world what really happened. This story isn't just about scandal or celebrity gossip. It's about human emotion in its rawest, most relatable form. Anger, disappointment, disbelief, heartbreak. These are universal feelings experienced by everyone at some point in life. And by seeing them unfold in the lives of public figures, we gain perspective, empathy, and sometimes a shocking reminder of how fragile trust truly is. And so, we begin at the very start. The friendship that seemed unbreakable, the bond that everyone admired, and the subtle warning signs that hinted at the storm to come. But what Jessica experienced was more than a friendship gone wrong. It was a betrayal that would leave lasting scars, one that would reverberate not just through her personal life, but through every public encounter, every media headline, every whispered conversation. And as she would soon realize, silence could only protect her for so long. What does it feel like to meet someone and immediately think, this person is going to change my life? For Jessica Mulroney, that moment came in a way that seemed almost cinematic. It wasn't just another networking encounter or casual social introduction. It was the kind of meeting that feels like destiny, the kind that makes you imagine endless possibilities of laughter, support, and companionship. That person was Meghan Markle. At the time, few could have predicted that this friendship, seemingly built on mutual admiration and shared ambition, would evolve into one of the most shocking personal betrayals Jessica would ever face. Jessica was at a stage in her life where her career and personal worlds were flourishing. She had established herself as a respected fashion stylist and media personality in Canada, and her public persona exuded warmth, charm, and trustworthiness. Meghan, a rising star in Hollywood with an infectious energy, crossed paths with Jessica in a social setting that would mark the beginning of what many would later call an unbreakable bond. From the outside, it looked effortless. They laughed together, shared stories, and quickly became inseparable. Imagine the kind of friendship where phone calls are constant, text messages are frequent, and weekend plans are a given. Jessica and Meghan fit that description perfectly. Their schedules were packed with professional commitments, social events, and, most importantly, shared experiences that deepened their connection. Travel, parties, and philanthropic events became regular shared experiences, each one layering trust and familiarity. But, as Jessica would later come to realize, even the strongest friendships can harbor unseen cracks. In the early months, there were moments that seemed trivial at the time, but now, in hindsight, Jessica would recognize them as the first subtle signs of imbalance. Small things, a flippant comment, a microaggression, a hint of jealousy. These were seeds that, over time, would grow into something far more toxic. Yet in the beginning, Jessica didn't see it. Why would she? Meghan was charming, articulate, and the very definition of charisma. Jessica trusted her implicitly. She had no reason to question her motives. Every public appearance was another affirmation of their bond. Weddings, galas, charity events. Jessica and Meghan were photographed together, celebrated together, and publicly lauded for their friendship. They were, in many ways, a power duo, glamorous, influential, and admired by peers and media alike. People outside that circle envied the closeness they shared. But envy is often the mirror of perception, not reality. For every smile captured on camera, for every laugh shared in public, there were private moments that told a different story, moments that Jessica would only understand fully much later. Think about the way friendships work at this level. Trust is not just built on mutual affection, but also on shared secrets and vulnerabilities. Jessica confided in Meghan, sharing details of her personal life, her fears, her ambitions. Meghan reciprocated, or so it seemed. That exchange of trust created a sense of invincibility. Jessica believed she had someone in her corner who would never betray her. She believed they were equals, that the bond was mutual, and that their friendship could withstand anything. Yet there were already subtle indicators that Meghan had a different perspective on the relationship. Jessica noticed fleeting moments where Meghan's attention seemed divided, where her stories were interrupted by side conversations, where her focus drifted toward other connections. At the time, Jessica rationalized these behaviors. Meghan was ambitious, busy, navigating Hollywood, and trying to maintain her public persona. There was no reason to suspect malice. But as the layers of betrayal would later unfold, these early signs would take on a much darker meaning. The friendship continued to evolve, and with it, the stakes grew higher. Jessica introduced Meghan to her inner circle, invited her into her home, shared intimate family moments, and allowed Meghan to witness her most private experiences. In return, Meghan seemed to reciprocate the loyalty and attention, offering encouragement, support, and friendship that appeared genuine. They laughed, celebrated milestones, and presented a united front to the world. For outsiders, this friendship looked ideal, symbiotic, glamorous, and aspirational. Jessica's family also embraced Meghan. They welcomed her into holiday gatherings, family dinners, and casual celebrations. They shared meals, jokes, and stories, further solidifying Meghan's place in Jessica's personal life. To Jessica, this was proof of the depth and authenticity of their friendship. The bond felt unbreakable, almost sacred. Every moment together reinforced the idea that they were allies, confidants, and friends who would support each other through any challenge. But friendships, even the most seemingly solid, can be deceptive. Jessica didn't yet know that the outward appearances of loyalty could mask a very different reality. Betrayal doesn't announce itself in loud, dramatic ways at first. It starts subtly, almost imperceptibly, in small actions, omissions, or decisions that, taken individually, seem inconsequential. But when they accumulate, the impact can be devastating. And that's exactly what happened here. The early phase of their friendship, the before the fall period, was the calm before the storm. Jessica felt secure, confident, and validated in her connection with Meghan. She believed she had found a kindred spirit. Someone she could trust, someone who would support her without question, someone who would be there for her through thick and thin. But beneath the surface, Meghan's motives were already shifting in ways Jessica could not yet perceive. Every laugh, every celebration, every girl talk moment created a sense of normalcy. Jessica looked around and saw validation everywhere. Mutual friends who admired the bond, public appearances that cemented their image, social media posts that celebrated their closeness. She believed she had found not just a friend but an ally, someone who would stand by her no matter what. And that belief would make the eventual betrayal all the more crushing. As we reflect on the beginning of this friendship, one thing becomes clear. Jessica had no idea the storm brewing behind the smiles. The very person she trusted implicitly, the person she welcomed into her home and heart, was about to commit an act that would forever change her life. Betrayal, as they say, often comes from where we least expect it. And in this case, it was about to come from someone Jessica considered family. But the cracks were there. Subtle, almost invisible. The tiny inconsistencies, the occasional flares of jealousy, the whispered comments that didn't quite make sense at the time. All of these were harbingers of a betrayal that would shake Jessica to her core. She just didn't know it yet. And that's where we leave it for now. The friendship that looked perfect, the bond that seemed unbreakable, and the subtle, almost invisible warning signs that no one noticed. Jessica's world was about to be turned upside down. When a betrayal is coming, it rarely arrives in a dramatic, cinematic explosion. Most of the time, it whispers. It sneaks in through small, seemingly insignificant moments. Moments that, if you're paying close attention, you can see as cracks in the foundation long before the walls collapse. Jessica Mulroney didn't notice these whispers at first. She was too wrapped up in the warmth of her friendship with Meghan Markle, in the excitement of shared successes, and in the comforting illusion of loyalty. It started with the little things. Tiny inconsistencies that seemed innocent at the time, but, looking back, screamed of something more. A flippant remark that didn't sit right, a joke that carried a subtle edge, a compliment that felt less sincere than it should have. Jessica noticed these things occasionally, but she brushed them off. Meghan was charming, articulate, and magnetic. Surely she couldn't harbor ill intentions, right? But over time, the subtle signs became harder to ignore. Jessica began to notice patterns in Meghan's behavior, patterns that revealed glimpses of a personality that was, at times, unpredictable and self-serving. Perhaps it was a conversation about a mutual friend that felt slightly manipulative, or a moment when Meghan's attention seemed to shift away from Jessica in favor of someone else. Maybe it was a comment about Jessica's family, framed as a joke, but carrying an undertone of judgment or envy. Every friendship has its small tiffs, of course. Arguments, misunderstandings, even jealousy are normal. But these were different. They were not fleeting moments that passed with a laugh or apology. They lingered, subtle but persistent, and Jessica couldn't quite place why they made her feel uneasy. Sometimes, she chalked it up to stress or misinterpretation, convincing herself that Meghan's intentions were good. But deep down, something felt off. The subtle signs extended beyond words. Actions, too, spoke volumes. Invitations were sometimes rescinded at the last minute, or plans canceled without explanation. There were times when Jessica noticed Meghan's attention wandering during conversations, her expressions fleetingly dismissive, her tone unexpectedly sharp. These behaviors weren't overtly hostile, but they carried a weight that Jessica couldn't ignore once she started paying attention. And yet, the trust was still there. Jessica had invested in this friendship emotionally, socially, and personally. She had welcomed Meghan into her family's life, into her home, and into her private world. The investment made it difficult to see the warning signs for what they truly were. After all, how could someone so close, someone who shared your laughter and confidences, be capable of betrayal? That's the cruel paradox of trust. It blinds you to the truth until it's too late.